Hey, what's up guys? This is George from Jig Pro Fishing. Welcome to a new episode of Jig Pro Tips. Today, I'd like to talk about what is slow pitch jigging. Most of you have heard about this new technique. You've seen some of the pictures, I'm sure you've seen some videos, and I'm sure you guys are interested in what actually means slow pitch jigging. So let's get to it. Slow pitch jigging was created about 10-12 years ago in Japan by this guy called Norihimo Sato. Norihimo was a local fisherman concerned about how overfished the local waters were. So Norihimo put a plan together on developing a new technique to rescue the recreational fishing industry. Because back then, it was so little fish on the water that the recreational guys stopped going fishing. During Norihimo's research, he soon realized that the fishery was more stretched in the shallower water. So he based his new technique in three fundamental things: deep water fishing, bottom fishing, and how can you catch fish during any time of the day. That's how everything started. After many years of research, trial and error, Norihimo finally developed this new concept of slow pitch jigging, where he didn't realize back then that he just created one of the most effective fishing techniques. The first point I like to touch base on is comparing vertical jigging versus slow pitch jigging, just because most of you guys are already familiar with the concept of vertical jigging and a lot of people get confused. So let me explain side by side one technique versus the other. So we're going to be talking about three main differences, three main points. So number one is going to be the tackle size. When we were vertical jigging, we were using usually spinning reels, thick braid, very thick, heavy duty rod with very fast action. When we are slow pitch jigging, we're using a very different tackle. So we're using smaller reels, very thin line, very high gear reels. And our rods are very thin and light, and they're designed to just move the jig, not so much to fight the fish. The second difference is the fishing technique. When we were doing vertical jigging, we were being very energetic, moving that jig really fast, trying to get the predators chasing that jig to get a hookup. Mostly catching pelagic species and species that live up in the water column. When we are slow pitch jigging, we are doing a slower movement, very close to the bottom most of the time. The third difference, and to me the most important, is actually why the fish are eating the jig. Vertical jigging versus slow pitch jigging. When we were vertical jigging, we were provoking the fish to chase them, so they were chasing them because they were hungry. We are slow pitch jigging. We are creating what is called a reaction bite, and they're not eating the jig only because they're hungry, if not because the fish are more accessible to the presentation of the jig. Before moving on to the next step, that will be the technique, I'd like to stop for a second and talk about what is, for me, one of the most important parts of your slow pitch jigging setup is the reel and the line. So when we are slow pitch jigging, we're usually using very light, powerful reels that help us fight the fish. As we say, the rods weren't really designed to fight the fish, even though some of them have or could have some backbone. They're not really designed to fight the fish. So we use our reel and our line to fight the fish. Very important, when you select a slow pitch jigging reel, make sure it's an arrow reel, so when you are retrieving the line always stays inside of the spool. When it comes down to the line, so we usually use very thin braid, 8-strand braid, usually as a standard, and it changes between 30-40 pounds, and it goes down all the way to 8 pounds. And the way that we select the braid size, it depends on how deep are we fishing. So when we fish in shallower water, we typically want to use thicker braid just because there's more structure, and also our jig needs to cut through the water column for less time. When we go and fish deeper water, typically it's less structure and our jig needs to travel through the water column for longer time, so we need thinner braid to cut through the water column and get down as quick as possible. The last point of the video is going to be about the technique, slow pitch jigging technique. Three main things when we are talking about slow pitch jigging technique. Number one, when it comes down to the tackle, you guys need to make sure your tackle is balanced. What does that mean? So if you're using a light rod, make sure you're using a light reel. And you're gonna pick your tackle based on what scenario you're gonna fish on. The next thing is going to be understanding the conditions you're gonna fish on. So some days you're gonna have heavy wind, heavy current. Other days you're gonna have a flat, dead, calm sea. Depends on the conditions. You're gonna use skinnier jigs, wider jigs, or heavier, or lighter. And third and most important, staying vertical is the key. That's why it's number three. Number one, balanced tackle. Number two, understanding the conditions. If you check these two out, more likely you're gonna be vertical. If you're vertical, you're gonna catch fish. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. If you guys have any questions, please drop a comment below and stay tuned for more episodes on Jig Pro Tips.